Hi, my name is Geshe Michael Roach, and we'll be talking today a little bit about Lady Niguma and Lady Niguma's yoga, which is the subject of this video. So I thought first of all you'd like to know a little bit about the history of this yoga series and the life of the person who designed it. The series was designed by Lady Niguma. Lady Niguma lived about 1,000 years ago in India. She was from India. And this particular series, this type of yoga, is very important because she actually passed down this yoga, and we'll talk about the story of that. But there are written records of this yoga in Tibet that were written down, I'd say, 400 years ago in Tibet. And they recorded the details of her yoga asanas, and then people in Tibet have been doing Lady Niguma's yoga for about 1,000 years now and have passed it down from person to person. But the written record of Lady Niguma's yoga, which was written down by a lama named Taranatha, who was born around 1575, that record of yoga asanas coming from 1000 AD, which is when Lady Niguma lived. So she designed this series exactly 1,000 years ago in India, and it has been passed on since then and written down, and we were able to find a copy of the original manuscript and translate it, and also there's a lineage in Tibet of Lady Niguma's yoga. So what it means is that yoga asana series that we'll be talking about is the oldest written record of yoga exercises. The Yoga Sutra, of course, is much older, but it doesn't actually describe the yoga exercises. And the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, which does describe some of the exercises, is a little bit older than Lady Niguma's yoga by about 5 centuries. So actually, the yoga you're going to be seeing in the video is the oldest written record that we have of yoga exercises, poses, asanas. And it's the very first yoga series that we have that was designed by a woman, by a yogini, by a woman yoga practitioner. I think her yoga is unique in the whole world because for Lady Niguma, yoga wasn't just meant to be exercises. Yoga wasn't just meant to be asanas. Her yoga, which in Tibet is called tunkor. Tunkor means machine, or a machine of the body. You can almost picture the body as a bunch of levers and pulleys and gears, and that's the meaning of tunkor. Her tunkor, or Lady Niguma's yoga, is unique in the history of yoga because in the written records of her yoga, she actually describes why you're doing the yoga asanas, and for her, doing the yoga asanas is a path to enlightenment. It's a method of reaching enlightenment. And each twist, each bend, each bandha, each retention, these are all have specific goals in the purification of the heart and the spirit and the mind. So in the written records of her tunkor, or her yoga, they'll describe, if you have a problem with jealousy, if you tend to be a jealous person, then you should do this twist at your stomach. And if you tend to be an angry person, then perhaps you should do a bend to the left, which would open up the right-hand channel, and it would lessen your anger. So the written record of her yoga, which we located in places like St. Petersburg and Mongolia and translated, the written record is very exciting because she goes through each of the major negative emotions that exist in the human heart, and then she prescribes certain yoga poses for that. So that's a very unique part of Lady Niguma's yoga. She also does a very interesting thing about the chakras. And so we like to teach Lady Niguma's yoga asanas or exercises in a series. So in the very first series of Lady Niguma's yoga, which is what this video is dedicated to, we'll concentrate on her presentation of how yoga opens the chakras of the body and what that means for a person. What happens to you if your chakras are opened by your yoga asanas? I think before we get into the details of that, it might be interesting just to talk a little bit about her life. We don't know a lot about her life, like Yogi Swatmarama, who wrote the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, or Master Patanjali, who wrote the Yoga Sutra. Traditionally in India and Tibet, they didn't keep history books. They didn't write about people's lives. Stories were passed down by word of mouth about people, but nobody wrote biographies of people like that. We don't have great biographies of Master Patanjali or Yogi Swatmarama, but we do, in the case of Niguma, we do have a record called the Blue Annals, Depter Ngumbo in Tibetan, that was written maybe about 700 years ago. And in this book they describe a little bit about Lady Niguma's life, which is a very beautiful story. She grew up in a village in northeast India, probably in what's Bengal, the area of Bengal now. And this area of India was very active in Buddhist studies. Buddhism was very strong there. The most famous monasteries of ancient India, Nalendra Monastery, Vikramalashila, these great monastic universities of Buddhism, and great Hindu yoga schools, yoga mats. They were living together. They were staying together. They would collaborate with each other. They would learn from each other. So during her time, during Lady Niguma's time, a great movement was going on in northeast India, where Buddhists and Hindus, yogis, were working together, learning together. And if you study the lineage trees, which are called parampara in Sanskrit, if you study the lineage trees from the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, for example, you can find Naropa there, and you can find some of the great Mahasiddhas or the great saints who are recognized in Tibetan Buddhism. And then you can find a lot of the great Indian yogis, like Matsyendra or Goraksha, who were Hindu. So in those days, the two lineages, the Buddhist yoga lineage and the Hindu yoga lineage were together, and they would collaborate with each other. So anyway, Lady Niguma was born in a small village in northeast India. She lived a quiet life there. She helped her father, who was a Brahmin priest, a priest of the Hindu religion. And one day she found out about a prince, the prince of the country, whose name was Naropa. And the story goes like this. Naropa was born in the northeast of India 1,000 years ago. He was born into a royal family. And from the earliest age, he showed every desire not to be a rich person. He didn't want to be wealthy. He didn't want to be a king. He wanted to be a yogi. And he wanted to find out the real meaning of life. And he wanted to reach enlightenment in his life. So it's pretty typical that the karma to be a king and the karma to be a great yogi are the same. And the day comes when a person has to make a choice. If they have that karma for great wealth and great comfort, or they have the karma to go on and become enlightened. So he reached this fork in his road, Naropa, where he could go either way. And he told his parents that he had made a decision to devote himself to the path of yoga and to the path of spiritual development. And then his father, as all kings, was worried that there wouldn't be any prince to carry on the kingdom. And he tried to talk Naropa out of it, going on a spiritual path, which also happened with the Buddha, Gautama. This is the same story as what happened with the Buddha himself, about 15 centuries before Naropa. So Naropa, wishing to please his father and his mother, he said, okay, I will agree to become the prince of the country, and I will agree to have a family, and I will agree to have a wife who will be queen of this country. But I have certain requirements about the wife, and you must find this woman, or else I won't agree to marry anybody. I want a special woman. And they said, well, what kind of woman do you want? You know? And she said, well, first of all, her name has to be Niguma. And she must be, the typical age for marriage in India was like between 16 and 18. She must be like this certain age. She must be a high social level of the Hindu religion. Her family must be Brahmin. They must be the highest level in our society. but she must also be a Buddhist. Which at that time, then his parents got upset, because at that time you couldn't technically be a Hindu and a Buddhist at the same time. But they decided, and she must be fantastically beautiful, and she must be incredibly compassionate. And so he made a long list, which he thought it would be impossible to find such a woman. And he was confident that he could become a monk and become a yogi and not have to live the family life. So the king, despairing, appointed 2 ministers to try to find Niguma, to find this woman. And the story is they searched for about a year throughout Bengal. They went to every little village looking for this woman, and then they couldn't find her. And they lost a lot of weight, and they looked terrible, and they were all dirty, and they looked like beggars by that time. And they rested at a village near a well, and they didn't have a bucket to get the water out of the well. So they sat down near the well, and then this beautiful woman, this beautiful young lady comes walking towards the well. And they're looking at her, and they're thinking, who is this lady? And then she has a Brahman's sutra. She has the sacred thread of a Brahman's family around her body. So now they're more interested. They say, she's from a Brahman's family. This is a good sign. And then she leans over the well with her hands on the well, and suddenly the bucket jumps up out of the well, and it's full of water, and she doesn't have to do anything. She just looks down, and the bucket flies up, and she grabs it, and she starts walking away. And they're like, she has special powers. This is something special. So they called to her, and they said, we've been traveling, we're very hungry, She says, you look like you might be thirsty. And she came and she knelt down, and she poured out, very gracefully, she poured out cups of water for them, and she served them as if they were ministers of the king. They looked like beggars, right? So then they thought, this lady has the heart of a bodhisattva. This lady has a bodhisattva's behavior. In her heart, she's a Buddhist. She has a bodhisattva's behavior. So then they checked, and they said, what is your name? And she said, my name is Niguma. I come from the Nigu tribe, and my name is Niguma. And then, they were so happy, on this. They said, we've been looking for you for a year, now we found you. You're so lucky, this is your lucky day. You get to marry Naropa. You get to become the queen of our country. He's the prince, and you're going to be so lucky. And she says, wait, I have to ask my father. And so they said, okay, ask your father, but who would refuse the king? So they went to the father's house, and he listened to them, and he said, look, Naropa's family is Buddhist, my family is Hindu. This is not going to work out. I can't give permission for my daughter to become the queen. So the 2 ministers, they decided to lie down on the porch of the house in protest. And they decided to stay on the porch until they died. They said, we'd rather die than go home and say, we found Niguma, but we couldn't bring her. So they got skinnier and skinnier, and then one person from the village walked by and said, why are you there? And they explained this is going to be the queen of our country, but the father is refusing. And then the villager said, that doesn't sound right to me. And he told his cousin, and his cousin came and talked to them, and then his uncle came and talked to them, and then his sister came and talked to them. And soon there's a big crowd of people outside of the house, and they are all yelling, give Niguma to Naropa, give Niguma to Naropa, And then finally the father says, all right, we'll do it, So anyway, they got married, and the king and queen were waiting for children, because this is what princes and princesses are supposed to produce for the country. But instead of producing children, Naropa was teaching Niguma about spiritual subjects. So all day long they would do yoga, all day long they would meditate together, all day long they would study scriptures together, all day long they would help the poor people. And he didn't have time to make a family for the family. And then one day, the king and the queen were getting really insistent that Naropa should produce some kind of an heir to the throne. And then Naropa went to Niguma and said, look, honestly, I don't want to be the king. I want to be a yogi. I want to practice yoga. I want to, pursue my spiritual development, which can be done in a family, but he wanted to do it in a different way. So anyway, it's a long story, which I won't tell the whole story, but he left to become a monk, and then Niguma said, "I can't live without you. We should be together." And then, so Niguma followed Naropa, and in time he became the greatest monk of ancient India. He became very famous, and he became the greatest abbot of Nalanda Monastery, which was the greatest monastery in the world at the time. And there's a long story, which we don't have time to tell. But an old woman came, a witch, and made fun of him and told him he didn't know anything. And he said, "No, I'm the greatest scholar in India, I'm the greatest monk in India." She said, "You don't know anything. You really don't know anything about yoga." And then he said, "Well, who knows about yoga?" And she said, "Talopa knows about yoga." And then she disappeared. And then he got this doubt in his heart, and he left behind. For the second time, he left his life behind. And he left and became a yogi in the jungle, and he's devoted himself to the path of yoga. And he became very famous in yoga. Then he taught a Tibetan. One Tibetan, very brave Tibetan, came down out of the Himalayan mountains, found Naropa. His name was Marpa, Lord Marpa, and he studied with Naropa. Then he took that yoga back to Tibet. And Marpa's disciple was Milarepa, the most famous meditator of Tibet. And in that way, the 6 yogas of Naropa, Narochutu, Shat Dharma of Naropa, came to Tibet and began to be studied in Tibet, up to the time of the first Dalai Lama's teacher, named Tsongkhapa. And he wrote a book called Yiche Sumden, the Book of Three Beliefs, in which he taught yoga to the first Dalai Lama. And then that yoga came down to our present time and to my teachers who taught me Naropa's yoga. At the same time that Naropa was teaching yoga to Marpa, Niguma, his beloved partner, started a beautiful school for women to study yoga. And this was on an island called Sosa in the middle of the Ganges River, the river Ganga. And she started a special school for women yoginis to study yoga. And they studied there, and it became a very famous school. And there was one Tibetan monk named Kyungbo Nyamdor who heard about this teacher, Niguma, Lady Niguma, and he was very, very, when he heard her name up in Tibet, when he just heard her name mentioned by a traveler, then he had this vision that he had to go find her, and he had to study her yoga. So he came down out of the Himalayas. Very difficult, very dangerous trip in those times. And most people who come down out of the Himalayas to India in those days would get tuberculosis because of the climate, changing climate. He came down, he found her in the Ganges River. He found the island Sosa. He came there. He got across the river. He got to the island, and there was nobody there. There was nobody on the island of Sosa. You know? And then he was very upset, and he sat down on the island, and then he heard this singing. He heard women singing. And then he looked around, he couldn't see anybody. Then he looked up in the air, and then he realized, they say the height of 7 palm trees laid end to end. So I don't know what, like 500 feet up in the air, there's like 100 women. And they are singing, they are chanting kirtan, right? They are chanting yoga songs. And then they are doing yoga up there in the sky. They already learned how to fly from their yoga, and they're all up in the sky. And then there's a beautiful story how Lady Niguma came down, and he begged her for this yoga, and she finally agreed to teach him. And then he brought it back to Tibet. And it was passed on in Tibet up to the time through the second Dalai Lama, Gendon Gyatso. And then it came down to our present day. So this yoga series has been designed by one of the greatest women yogis in ancient India, and that's the story of Niguma. Some Tibetans say that her real name was Nirguna, which means no qualities, which means emptiness, the idea of emptiness. And we can talk more about that someday. So how does Lady Niguma's yoga work, and why is Lady Niguma's yoga important for people in modern days, right? I think when we began to learn Lady Niguma's yoga, we felt that here was a very exciting yoga, because her yoga has a very special order, sequencing of the asanas. It goes in a special order. It goes up the chakras of the body. And it has a very powerful effect on the body because it moves in a logical way, because it moves in a set progression through the chakras. Then something happens to the prana. Prana flows more easily after you do this yoga. If you do this yoga over a period of months, and you do it in the order or the sequence in which she explains, the poses are not difficult, and the poses are not different from the yoga which is taught in the West today. Strange thing, the yoga which is taught in the West today, whether it is Iyengar or whether it's come down through Sri Pattabhi Joyce or through Mr. Bikram or through Anusara, all of these systems of yoga, the yoga poses which they teach are very, very good and very authentic. And it's very funny that yoga has come to our country sort of in a mishmash way. There wasn't any organized way that it came here, but all the poses are very, very good, and they are very authentic. So any yoga studio you go to, the poses are good, and the poses are authentic. They are still the poses which are being done in Tibetan monasteries by very advanced monks. And they are very surprised that yoga has come this way to the West. I have a teacher who helped me begin Naropa's yoga. He taught me the Book of Three Beliefs. And I remember when I finished the Geshe degree takes 20 years of study. And then it's a 3-week exam at the end. And then after you finish the exam, they say Geshe Tang. Geshe means this kind of degree, right? Tang means to do your Geshe degree, to complete your Geshe degree. But the word Tang also means to throw something out. So there's a joke in the monastery that Geshe Tang, when you reach Geshe Tang after 20 years, you should throw your books out and just relax. Geshe Tang, so throw out your Geshe and then relax, So I Geshe Tang after 20 years, and I was relaxing in my room, and then they said, you have to go to the abbot, and there's a special room next to the abbot's room, and there's a lama waiting there for you, and you have to go talk to him. So I went there. It was very beautiful. They take you in a secret room. They put you on a throne, which traditionally only an abbot can sit. And then they come out and they lock the door and they close the door. And you sit there for 3 hours on the abbot's throne. And then all these weird visions come to you and cool stuff comes to you. Then the teacher comes in and then he says, okay, now you have to start secret studies. Vajrayana, the diamond way. And now that you've finished, the first 20 years was just the warm-up. Now you have to do the secret studies. And then I said, well, what are we going to do in the secret studies? And he said, yoga. Yoga exercises. So I said, I heard about yoga. I know lots of people in America who do yoga, and we don't do that. Tibetans don't do that. Tibetan monks don't do yoga. He said, don't say Tibetan monks don't do yoga. You never saw them do yoga, but they do yoga. Then I said, well, who's the teacher? And then he said, I'm the teacher. And I said, no, you're not the yoga teacher. He was our logic teacher. He taught us logic. He said, no, I'm also the yoga teacher. So he taught us Naropa's poses. He started us on Naropa's poses. And then I had a chance to come back to the United States, and I went to a yoga class in New York at Jiva Mukti Yoga. And I met David Life and Sharon Gannon, and they taught me some yoga. And I was surprised because this was the same yoga they were teaching us in the monastery. So I went back to my teacher in the monastery, and I said, I have some bad news. And he said, what? And I said, your big secret yoga, which it takes 20 years to have permission to study yoga in our monastery. I said, there's people in America who are already doing this yoga, And he said, oh, really? And I said, yeah, they're doing the same poses, And then he said, well, how many? How many people? And I said, well, I read in a newspaper called Wall Street Journal. It said like 50 million Americans have tried yoga. And then he looked at me, he said, 50 million? Yeah, and I said, and it's not like your yoga, you have to wait 20 years. I said, you pay $15, you go in and you get the yoga, and you can get it on the first day. And then he looked at me and then he started to weep. He started to cry, And then I thought, oh, this is really improper. The teacher is upset because his secret yoga got to him, so many Americans, I said, you don't have to cry. They're just doing yoga for exercise. They just want to be thin. They're not using yoga like you are using yoga. Then he said, no, you don't understand. He said, I'm crying out of happiness. And I said, what? What do you mean? And he said, do you realize that in the Tibetan system, you have to study for 20 years. You need 20 years of inner preparation before you can start the outer poses of yoga. But these people in America and other countries, these 50 million people, they have studied yoga in their past life. And they have been geshe in their past life. And that's why when they see the sign for yoga or they hear about a yoga class, they want to go because they already have the seed in their mind from their past life. 50 million people in the West are on the verge of enlightenment. 50 million people, without even knowing why, are attracted to yoga, which is one of the most advanced methods of getting to enlightenment, becoming an enlightened, immortal, enlightened being who can help all other beings. 50 million people are on the edge of enlightenment without knowing it, and I'm crying because I'm happy, And he was so beautiful. So I think that's a good message for us in the West, that yoga, properly done, if you are trained properly in yoga, in yoga such as Niguma's yoga, then it can actually transform your being and take you to enlightenment quickly. So he said we're in a golden era. This is a golden age, and 50 million people in the world are doing yoga. And I said, no, Rinpoche, you don't understand. They just want to lose weight, they want to look nice. He said, no, you don't understand. He said, they just forgot why they are doing yoga. They just don't remember why they are doing yoga. So we have to remind them. So that's part of the reason we are doing Niguma's yoga. How does Niguma's yoga prepare you to reach a higher state? What does the Niguma's yoga do? I really like Niguma's yoga because when I first learned yoga, and yoga in the West, there's been a tendency that only certain people can do yoga. Only people who have money and people who have time, they can take an hour off the middle of their day, or the yoga class is an hour and a half. It takes half an hour to get there, it takes half an hour to get home. You're talking 2.5 hours in the middle of the day. Most people can't afford that. Most people have to go to work, and they can't take 2.5 hours off. Even in the evening it's difficult. So maybe they can go once a week or something like that. The cool thing about Niguma's yoga is that it's only, you can go through the whole series in half an hour. And we tried it the other day just to check. And you can go through the whole series. The video, where we go through it slowly for you, and all of you guys are demonstrating the asanas, and you're showing all the variations and things like that. The video takes an hour and something, an hour plus. But once you learn it from the video, and you just go through it, you can finish Lady Niguma's very powerful, very effective, and very easy yoga in half an hour. And in the morning, and then you go to work, and you've had all the benefits of an hour and a half of regular yoga because of the order in which she does the yoga. And if you understand her yoga, then it's a lot more powerful on your body. So a half hour in the morning is enough to get you through the day. And a half hour of her yoga changes your day. Why? To understand that, you have to understand the chakras, okay? The inner chakras. And I want to show you how they teach Lady Niguma's yoga in the monastery, all right? How they teach the chakras in the monastery. So for that, usually the teacher starts with a Buddhist beads with mala. So you guys brought some, right? I think I need 3 of these things. Yes? Yeah. Okay, good. So this is how they teach the chakras in the monastery. And this is how they demonstrate the value of doing Lady Niguma's yoga. So in the body, there are 72,000 channels that look like blood veins that move through the body. They are like pipes that cover the body like channels or subway tunnels. And then they are made of light. If you cut open the body, you won't see them. They are physical, but they are a very subtle form of matter. So you can't see them like blood vessels. Okay? They pass through the body. Inside of those channels passes an energy called prana, which you know the word prana. In Tibetan they call lung. In China they call chi. In Japan they call ki. What in Vietnam is there a separate word? I don't know. Ki. So they call prana means inner wind, right? Pra means forth. An means to breathe. Pra-an means to breathe forth. An is the word breath came into English in the word animus, or animal, or animated, or anime, and it means breathing creature, living creature. Okay, so prana is a subtle but physical force which passes through the channels of the body, the 72,000 channels of the body. When the body needs to do a function, the prana collects in that area and helps the body perform that function, and then it goes back to the other parts of the body. So if you have to go pee-pee or poo-poo, the prana will all collect into the apana vayu, the downward clearing wind, and it will help you clear the body of waste. If you need to breathe, when you need to breathe, prana collects at the throat, in the area of the throat, the Vishuddha chakra, and this udana vayu, the upward clearing wind, helps you breathe or helps you speak. So prana is necessary for performing all the functions of the body. These channels, although there are 72,000 channels, all of the ancient scriptures say only 3 of the channels are really important. Okay, and those are Sushumna, Ida, and Pingala. Say Sushumna, Ida. To say Ida properly, you have to put your tongue backwards like that. Say Ida. Yeah, and then Pingala. Okay, so I want to show you what these look like. This is how they show us in the monastery. Sushumna, in Tibetan called Sa'uma, is the Madhyapata, it's the middle way, it's the middle channel. The Sushumna channel starts here, under the skull, and then it passes under the skull and continues down the back, right in front of the spine. In fact, the spine has formed around the Sushumna in the womb. So the Sushumna already exists, and then the bones are forming because of the channels. So the Sushumna goes under the skull, in front of the spine, and then down to the groin, and to the end of the sexual organ, okay, and terminates there. That's the Sushumna. There's another channel called the Pingala, which came into English as pink, meaning Pingala means the red-colored channel, or the rust-colored channel. And it starts here, next to the nose, and it goes up the inside of the nose, and then it continues on the right side of the Sushumna, the right side of the central channel, under the skull, in front of the spine, and down to the perineum, the groin. It splits down to the legs also. Okay, so that's Pingala. On the left side is a milky white channel called Ida. Ida means sheep, and it's a word for white. So milky white and milky red. Okay, not clear, not translucent, not crystal, dead color, dead white, dead red, dead white, and the Ida goes up the left side of the central channel. Okay, and passes down the same way. Now the big trick is that at the starting here, which is called Bruvor Madhya, between the two eyebrows, these two channels, let me get this straight. The Ida and the Pingala, okay? These two, by the way, that's why you have two nostrils. They have formed around the Ida and the Pingala in the womb, okay? So when the Pingala comes up to this area of between the eyebrows of the Ajna chakra, it crosses over. I'm going to drop the Ida for now. The Pingala crosses over the Sushumna and comes back, okay? So it looks like that between the eyebrows. It crosses over and comes back. The Ida You have to be really good. You want to hold that? Hold the pingala. All right. And then the ida comes up the same way, crosses over at between the eyebrows, and then comes back. So you have something like that. You have a knot. That knot, that choke point is called granti in Sanskrit. Say granti. Yeah, and it means a choke point. Okay, a knot. And so these twist around. The two side channels twist around and come back. They do that again at the top of the head. They do that again at the level of the throat. They twist 3 times around the central channel, the sushumna, at the heart chakra. Now I have to warn you about one thing, okay? It's important to realize that they say heart chakra, navel chakra, throat chakra, but they are not pasted on the front of the body. The navel chakra is not in the navel. The heart chakra is not in the heart. The throat chakra is not here somewhere in the throat. They are all back in front of the spine. They all follow the spine down the body. So when you try to feel them in the yoga series, in Niguma's chakra series, you have to try to feel them back in front of the spine. So as we do the exercises, you'll be trying to focus your mind on the chakras or the knots, okay? And there's a the most important concept of Tibetan yoga, which came from India, which came from the same yoga as Iyengar or Sri Patabi Joy's yoga or Mr. Bikram's yoga. These all come from the same sources. They just split for 1,000 years. Okay, the most important single concept in all of yoga in Tibet, and I want you to repeat the words. Say lung, sem, jupa, chikpa. Lung, sem, jupa, chikpa. It's like a mantra in our Tibetan monastery. Lung, sem, jupa, chikpa. Lung, sem, jupa, chikpa. Lung means prana. Sem means your thoughts. Jupa, chikpa means they ride in tandem. They always ride together, like a horse rider and a rider. Okay, the prana moves like a horse, and the thoughts ride on the prana. Where the prana goes, the thoughts will go. Where the thoughts go, the prana will go. If you focus your mind in your body at a chakra, your prana will come there. By the focusing of the mind in the right place in the body, the prana will collect there. So that's the principle behind using concentration or meditation to move prana in the body. You can also move prana through physical means. If you do this very powerful stretch to the, let's say to the right, like this, which is in the series, right? You open up the pingala physically, and then prana is forced to move. The horse is forced to move. What happens to the rider? The rider has to go. Lungsen Drupa Chikpa. He has no choice. Okay? If you use physical methods to move prana, the thoughts must follow. If you use thoughts to focus on the chakras, the prana must follow. Okay? So then we say again, chi, nang, tabla, zor, be. Chi nang, tabla, zor be. We make a promise to our teacher. We make a promise to our yoga teacher. We are required to make a promise. Chi nang tabla zor be. I will use outer methods, and I will use inner methods, and I will dedicate myself to both of them. Not just one or the other. Not just meditation, and not just yoga asana. I promise you, we have to make a promise. We are required. At the beginning of our training, we say, Chinan tabla zor be. I promise I will use the outer method of yoga, and I will use the inner method of concentration to move prana. Okay? One more point about the chakras. Okay? Where the granthis are, where the granthis form, the knots, these knots of the two side channels. Okay? They choke the sushumna. Okay? They choke the prana from moving in the sushumna. The prana is like water in a garden hose. It's trying to move through the sushumna, but it can't move because the sushumna is being choked by this side channel. So prana builds up here in the central channel. And like a garden hose, the hose gets fatter and fatter, and then it splits. It splits open. And then channels come out to the sides. Okay? For example, at the heart. In fact, we get in trouble in the monastery. If you point here at your chakra, you get this mala on your head. And then they're whack. And then you get dots. You come home with dots, and everybody laughs at you. They say, "Oh, you must have said something stupid in yoga class." So the channels at the heart chakra, they split out. 8 channels split out to the sides. If you look down the top of the person's spine, if you look down the spine, you will see channels radiating out like what? The spokes of a wheel. What's the name for wheel in Sanskrit? Chakra. Okay, chakra. So that's why chakras are called chakras. Okay, they are places where the 2 side channels choke the main channel, and then new channels spurted out to the sides like the spokes of wheels. And from the top, they look like wagon wheels, and so they're called chakras. You know, in the West, we have this picture of chakras as pretty red lights, or pretty green lights, or pretty yellow lights, or something like that, and they make beautiful drawings of them. Chakras are deadly. Chakras are very bad things. Chakras make the body mortal. Chakras kill the body. Okay? Those knots in the channels are responsible for the death of the human body, for the mortality of the human body. Why? Okay, how? Now you have to get into, let's start with Pingala, okay? So Pingala's coming up here, and at the bottom, okay, near the perineum, these 3 channels meet like plumbing. Can you hold this one? So Pingala's coming down like this. Pingala wraps under and connects into the Sushumna at the bottom. And then Ida comes down and connects into the Sushumna at the bottom. There's a Triveni, there's a 3-way juncture at the bottom. So prana can move through the Ida, prana can move through the Pingala, or prana can move through the Sushumna. Normally it's moving through one of them at a time. There's a limited amount of prana, and it can only move through one of these channels at a time. If prana moves out of the Ida, it will probably go into the Sushumna. If prana comes out of the Sushumna, it will go into one of the 2 side channels. Okay? Why is that important for us? Why is that important for Lady Niguma's yoga? We said before that the prana acts as the carrier or the horse for our thoughts. Okay? But there are always specific thoughts in specific channels. If prana is moving through the Pingala, if prana is moving through this channel, we feel upset, we feel angry, we feel jealous. All these hot emotions move through the red channel. Sometimes this is called the sun channel, Surya, or the red channel, or the male channel. But anger thoughts, upset thoughts, when you get upset, prana has moved into the Pingala. Okay? When you want something, okay, in a bad way. What does bad way mean? It's not wrong to want to help other people. It's not wrong to want to help your mother. It's not wrong to want to help all living beings. It's not wrong to want to be enlightened. It's wrong to want a car which is bigger than the car you need if the pursuit of that big car would hurt your family. If you would ignore your children and ignore your wife in the pursuit of a big car, then you have wrong wanting or wrong desire, and then prana has moved into the Ida channel. So when you want something in a wrong way, in a harmful way, that disturbs other people's lives, then that prana is moving through the Ida. Okay. Now, inside the Sushumna, when prana moves inside the Sushumna, we have thoughts of kindness, and we have thoughts of wisdom, and we have thoughts of understanding. If you could open the Sushumna enough, you would have such a high degree of wisdom and understanding that you could actually change your body from a mortal body into an enlightened being who could help all other beings. You see? Somebody like Jesus or Moses or Muhammad, you could become like them. If your Sushumna was open, you could become a person who truly helped all other people. Not just in this world, but in many worlds. When the Sushumna is truly open, your body changes into light. And there's a practice in Tibetan monasteries. They take a knitting needle, and they will check your yoga. They thrust it through your arm, and I never passed that test, okay? But they see how close to light is your arm getting. There was a tradition like this. So our goal in our yoga practice is to loosen the knots that are choking our ability to become a pure being. We want to loosen the two side channels and get them off of the central channel. So Lady Niguma said, in her first yoga series, and there are more series, okay? There are 6 series total. This is only the first series, all right? She said, in the first series, I want you to do 4 steps. At each chakra, you will do 4 kinds of asanas, okay? What? The first asana you do at each chakra should be a twist. Why? Yeah, you will untwist the side channels from the central channel, and you will loosen the prana. Prana will flow out of the pingala into the middle channel, and out of the ida into the middle channel. Eventually these two die. Eventually these two channels wither away, and you just have the central channel, and your body changes into light, you see? So, she said, first we'll do a twist, all right? Then, after the twist at each chakra, the 2 side channels will be loosened, but they will still be crooked. They will still be crooked. So the second asana at each chakra should be a stretch of some kind. Okay, there should be a stretching motion which will stretch out, especially the side channels, to get the prana out of them and into the central channel. Then she said the third asana you do at each chakra should be, we call gathering motion, a bandha. Okay, bandha means a lock, an inner lock. Bandkaro in India means I'm going on strike. I'm locking out. Okay, so the word band comes from band. So it'll be some kind of motion which takes the prana, which is now loosened from the 2 side channels, and thrusts it into the central channel, like sucks it into the central channel. So there should be some kind of sucking motion, some kind of internal retention or muscular, what do you call that, contraction, which brings prana into the central channel, out of the 2 side channels which are now untwisted and straight. So untwist, stretch, gather the prana into the sushumna, the middle channel, and then she says tigle dimba. What's tigle dimba mean? Yeah, redistribute the drops. Tigle means bindu means drops of prana or drops of consciousness. Dimba means redistribute, shake it out. Shake it out. And even this is a pose in some Tibetan asanas. Shake it out. So you forced prana into the central channel, and then you do an exercise which shakes it out, dimba. And that distributes the prana throughout the central channel. These same principles are discussed in the Yoga Sutra. Surye samyamat, chandre samyamat, dhruve samyamat. These are discussed in the Yoga Sutra. We are trying to open up the central channel. Last thing, which Lady Niguma says, is that we should work up the chakras. Okay, you don't untwist this chakra and then jump to this chakra before you straighten this one. Before you straighten this one. Okay, I like it if my students point to the back. So you should open them up one by one, and you should work up the body, and you shouldn't like jump around. Because if you untwist it here and then you jump up here to untwist that, then this is still crooked and it goes back to a twist. So it's very important to work up. Jiwane dimbale bena gawa, jiwane dimbale bena gawa, jiwane ninga lebena choga, ninga netera lebena kega. Dewa nino vitse lebana henge ki yeshi kepi dewa dan tobani yeme bitingin zan nyoma shukso. This is in the description of how to do the yoga. You know, you have to move up the chakras, and then later you'll be trained in how to move down the chakras. But you have to go in order, okay? So that's how we'll be doing Niguma's yoga series. The point is, open the chakras in order. Open the chakras one by one. Prana will come out of the 2 side channels, anger channel, desire channel, and it will move into the channel of wisdom. At some point, Kevala Kumbhaka, when the prana moves into the central channel, fully, the prana will stop. The breath will stop. You won't need to breathe anymore. Your body is not running from food or water or breath anymore. Your body is running from love. And your body is running from wisdom. And you don't need food anymore. You don't need water. And you don't need to breathe anymore. And then the body changes. When the body changes, a couple things happen. First time when the heart chakra opens, you have this experience of ultimate love. And you can see all the living creatures in all worlds, and you love them. And then as the Sushumna opens more and more, as prana moves more and more into the Sushumna, your body changes into light. And then eventually you reach a pure body which has the power to split, which has the power to clone itself. And then you can be on all the buses in New York at the same time. You can be riding on every bus in New York City at the same time, helping someone, serving someone, making someone happy. And this is the goal of yoga.